Today, I'm going to be using real life examples that have all happened to me at some point in my career. Hi, I'm Megan Akatsu, and I am a feminine leadership coach, and I help high achieving women define success on their terms without pushing and proving. So the question comes to you in a meeting: Megan, will you take notes in the meeting today? And how do you stay cool, calm, collected, and powerful while this question is being directed at you and all the eyes are on you? All right, let's get into it. The tendency is to either shrink and just say yes, just to diffuse the situation and make it go away, or fight and say, no, I'm not going to take notes. And that also makes us look aggressive and not like team players. And then we get labeled as that. So how do we diffuse the tension and also redirect the energy that keeps us in our powerful feminine authority and doesn't make the room more aggressive at the same time? So someone says, Megan, will you take notes today in the meeting? Couple options. So one option is you can say, no, I'm unable to take notes today based on my contribution to this discussion. Can we come up with a rotating note taker schedule? Another option could be, yes, I'm happy to take notes today. What is our regular schedule for rotating the note-taking responsibility? Or you get cut off in a meeting, and instead of saying, you cut me off, you can say something like, you started speaking before I was finished. This slight change in language makes the comment more neutral and still conveys that you are not finished speaking. Once in a meeting, an executive said, hey, do we have any more dry erase markers? And I immediately jumped up to go get them. And my boss looked at me like I had three heads. And I think she was silently pleading for me to sit back down. A more powerful response would have been, say, yes, they're right outside this conference room in the cabinet. Or right outside the conference room is David's desk. I know he knows where the extra markers are. It's not my job to know where the extra markers are. And I didn't need to jump in to help right in that moment. There have been a couple of times where my spouse and I have made pretty significant career changes that have also involved a move. And so when I was letting my boss know, hey, I'm no longer going to be working here and we are going to be moving, both times, more than once, different bosses have said, oh, what is your husband going to be doing? Even though I myself, a level manager within these organizations, a response there is, oh, my husband is going to be doing XYZ and I'm very excited to be doing ABC. Instead of getting mad, instead of holding on to it, instead of saying, I can't believe so-and-so boss didn't ask me what I'm doing, given everything that I've done for him in this organization, you can just nicely add it in there and move on. They will get the point. One time, a male colleague said to me about another female colleague who was walking by, oh, look at her perched up so nicely up on those heels. A few responses to that. One, you could say, perched, again, be quiet and see what they say in response. Or a third option could even simply be, let's keep these comments professional and then move on with your day. That alone keeps you out of the power dynamic. Comments on your appearance, such as, you look powerful today, can be, I feel powerful, I'm very excited for what we're building, immediately diffuses the situation. Or, what are you bringing to the table today? I'm bringing clarity. Let's get into it. Again, just move on with what you do and why you are there. You must be popular around here. I'm here to make decisions and move forward. My teacher has taught me when there is a lot of charged energy in the room is to use some of the words that they're using and then bring that up to language. Something like, oh, you look excited today and ready to go. What do you got for us today? And then you use the similar words to say, I am excited about the leadership decisions we are making today as we move forward. Using the same word as excited takes the energy of what they have already said, but then neutralizes it in a way of decision-making, clarity, moving things forward, and diffuses the tension in the room. Oh, wow, you're dressed up today. I'd like to dress for momentum. Always leave it with what you're trying to build and a way to move forward. One time I was in a very large meeting with about 25 senior level managers, and I was incredibly pregnant and about to go out on maternity leave. And a female VP made some sort of flippant comment around, oh, Megan can think about that while she's out on maternity leave and is bored and has nothing else to do. And in that room with mostly men, I immediately wanted to shrink and fall under the table. And especially when there's that many people in the room, a way to diffuse that energy is to use humor. And so something like, oh, you don't want me making any decisions when I haven't slept at all. I'll have that report done before I go on maternity leave. And so taking it and not making her wrong in front of all of her colleagues as well, right? So I'm not being aggressive, but I'm using humor to diffuse it, to be like, you wouldn't want me making decisions when I haven't had any sleep. And then that immediately, though, also addresses, like, we are not talking about what I am or am not doing on maternity leave, and you suggesting that I'm bored is like, it's not funny to me, but I can do that in a very non-aggressive way when I have my wits about me, and I can use humor to diffuse it. Here's a particularly nuanced situation, and I'm sharing it in case that helps. So one time I had flown in to give a marketing presentation to a whole bunch of our sales reps who were mostly male. And the sales manager had also flown in and was probably 20 years male, 20 years older than me. And so as the dinner's wrapping up, he said to me, "Hey, are you ready to go home?" And I was, and he was actually doing it to be a gentleman and to get me out of there. So, because I knew the sales reps were going to stay out drinking, and I knew I didn't want to stay out with them much longer. And yet I was also really uncomfortable that the salesman about the perception of what that meant if it looked like we were leaving together. And so there's a couple of different ways to approach this. One, it could be, you could be the first person to say, "Hey, good night, everyone. See you tomorrow morning," right? So you're the first person to take initiative in that situation. A second one is, let's say the sales manager had already said like, "Hey, I'm ready to go home. Anyone else want to go? Hey, Megan, you want to come too?" I could have just said, "Yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to call it a night." Anyone else headed out, and making sure that it like stays open and invites other people in. And actually that is what happened in this situation. Two other reps did get their coats and leave. This is a particularly nuanced situation. And I don't know that anyone else even felt what I was feeling, but I was just very aware of what it looked like as if I was leaving with the manager. And I really wanted to just make it more on my terms instead of like, "Oh, he invited me to go home." And so even opening up to a broader scope to say, "Hey, is anyone else ready to leave?" allows for that fluidity to come in. I will say all of these can be difficult, right? And so this is when we have to know ourselves really well and be able to be like, "Okay, I feel that flush, or I feel that pit in my stomach, and I still want to stay in my own power." So I really invite you to get to know your body sensations. I invite you to take a deep breath and then really respond from a place of high self-trust that I deserve to be here, and I'm not playing small, and I'm not placating to the person next to me, and I'm also not coming out fighting. And so how do you use your own wisdom to change the charge in the room that still keeps you in your authority and also holds that other person lovingly accountable to say, "I know what you just said there, and I'm going to diffuse it, and then we're going to move on from there." That is how you stay in your feminine power. Let me know how this goes in the comments, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.